Hello, you're watching Pantau Belanjawan with me, Nina Rosman, and with the recent news and launch from the GXBank, which launched the initiative in support of Malaysia's vision towards building a strong tech-based economy and elevating the nation as a regional technology and talent hub at Galleria Avenue Malaysia. Present to launch this initiative just now is the Prime Minister, Datuk Sri Anwar Ibrahim, who were accompanied by Tengku Datuk Sri Zafrul Tunku Abdul Aziz, Minister of Investment, Trade and Industry, and also Minister of Digital Gobi Singh Deo were at the ceremony officialized the event. And definitely on this segment, we want to focus on how does this initiative specifically align with Malaysia's vision of establishing itself as a leading tech-based economy and a regional technology hub. In what ways does it contribute to the development of the tech ecosystem, attract investment and foster innovation to support Malaysia's strategic goals in the technology sector? And we have guests to help us understand better on this. Already on the line is Raja Hamzah, founding partner, RHL Ventures. I want to say thank you very much, Raja, for joining me. Firstly, talking about this initiative, you want to check on the current trends, talking about fintech, technology, and even the digital ecosystem. Firstly, we will start with this launch first. How does the GXBank initiative specifically contribute to the Malaysians' visions of becoming a leading tech-based economy and a regional technology hub?
Hi, good morning, everyone. Thanks, Nina, for the time. I think with GXBank's launch, I think it's a signal to the market of the launch of the digital bank ecosystem in Malaysia. We all know in the past, I mean, the likes of AWANI has also launched. Now we have GXBank, and we have a few other digital banks that will launch soon as well. What that means, there'll be better financial accessibility for the general Malaysian public, but also signals to the market that the tech ecosystem is open for business. There's been big announcement in the past 3 months by the government, the likes of Microsoft, the likes of Nvidia, Amazon, all investing more. I think this is a big signal to foreign investors that Malaysia is open to business. We do have a thriving technology ecosystem, and we would love to welcome, I think, more investors to the table. So I believe that, I think, with this launch of GXBank, I think within the fintech ecosystem specifically, it will spur, I think, more innovation, but also at the same time, for the end customer, it'll improve the accessibility of.
And Raja, maybe many of us are expecting what are some of the new technological innovations or advancement will be introduced through this initiative, and how will they benefit even the local tech industry?
Okay, if you look into what can happen in, let's say, in the US, in China, I think consumers or even merchants can get loans instantly. I mean, with a strong AI-based credit monitoring system, loan approvals can be done in a very succinct and very quick manner, right? So what that means for the general consumer, one, if I'm a consumer, my loans can be approved in a much faster way. That spurs consumption. Consumption spurs economic growth. On the vendor or on the merchant side, let's say I'm a Grab food merchant, I want to access loans. I want to help. I want to get working capital. This enables me to tap the fintech ecosystem, tap the GXBank ecosystem to get loans in a quicker way. It enables me to grow the business. It also enables me to scale effectively, right? So what that means for the local tech industry, it creates a knock-on effect where we have businesses are doing well. So even, let's say I'm a software business selling to SMEs and startups. If my startups are doing well, my SMEs are doing well, this will enable me to open up more clients, more growth opportunities, and to scale up accordingly. I think when I look at Malaysia, the issue that we always had in growing up for the tech ecosystem is scale, right? Mm-hmm. How do we scale up in an ecosystem that only has 30 million consumers? Mm-hmm. But I think with the right approach, with the right growth in the ecosystem, there is still room to scale, and there's been success stories of our companies growing well, the likes of Kasem, the likes of Zeus, Aerodyne. So there's good success stories. It's just that we've got to sell the story a bit better.
And that is the narrative that we should bring forward. And also we want to look at the ways, how can this initiative or this effort support the development of local tech talent and elevate their skills to meet not only the regional but also the global standards?
I think in terms of talent point of view, I think the interesting part is that I'm also on the board of
I think Talent Corp, and I think upscaling talent is a key drive or key thrust of what we do. And in my opinion now, Malaysia is at probably a strong crossroads of talent due to our relatively affordable cost of labor. But at the same time, our talent are able to speak in multiple languages, and usually and we have a decent rule of law. So in essence, our talent is malleable across the whole of Southeast Asia and to a certain extent globally. I was just in London recently for a program with Talent Corp, and I think the number of Malaysians there working either in private equity, in finance, in PR, we have basically talents all across the globe. It's just, willing buyer, willing seller, meaning that they will just go where their economic opportunities find itself. I think in terms of the likes of, GXBank, even like YTL Bank coming on board, this creates more job opportunities that are higher paid. What that means is that this will enable us to keep some of the talents that locally by enabling to give them higher pay versus what was done before. So I think with tech, what I've seen within either the startups, the early stage startups, or even the later stage, tech corporates like Shopee, Grab, they've always been able to pay much better than your average employer in the market. So again, with all these, job opportunities coming up, whether it's from these tech companies like of GXBank to the data centers down south to the semiconductor companies up north in Penang, I think the talent market, if you have the right skills, it's pretty exciting at the moment.
And these are the talents that are needed and are in demand in the markets, because we know they are one of the talent that contribute to the innovations such as we've seen today, mobile banking, digital wallets, and even blockchain technology. How can all of these aspects and components improve the efficiency and the security of financial transactions?
So if you think of it in terms of security, I mean, obviously most banks are regulated by the central bank, but there's a certain level of proficiency that we can learn from our peers, and let's say in Singapore, also other developed markets, right? So I think in the past, what I've seen is to always look for talent outside, meaning that, if you want the best talent, we'll try to hire from outside, bring foreigners in to plug the gap. But I think now in this juncture, we do have a good broad base of talent. And what I found when talking to some of the digital banks, in the end, they managed to hire a lot of talent locally. Obviously, these talents are not cheap because I think banks pay relatively well. For example, a compliance officer in a bank, let's say in a Maybank or even an RHB, they pay at a certain level. So again, for a lot of these digital-enabled banks, they still have to have this back-end ecosystem, meaning that they will still have to pay a certain level of income or pay to get these talents. But what that means for the knock-on effect of the ecosystem, by having these traditional risk officers, compliance officers, they learn to be more digitized. This will enable some of the smaller fintech startups. If you're a P2P financing business, if you're earned wage access business, if you're an insurtech business, you can actually hire these people later on because I think they are more available in the market. So I'm just saying that this velocity of talent is important because in the end, talent creates companies. Companies create further job opportunities and also creates growth within the ecosystem. If we have a stagnant ecosystem where there are no new companies, no talents that are willing to jump from corporates to startup life, we will not have a vibrant ecosystem.
And that is talking about the talents and innovations from the aspect of a tech-based economy. And we want to make sure all of this will include the enhancement of financial inclusion at the end. So how are all of these fintech solutions improving access to, for example, like banking services for undeserved and rural populations? In what ways can fintech advancement contribute to economic growth in some remote areas, like the Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim said? How about the small businesses, the Grab drivers from the gig economy? What's your say on this?
Okay, I think the key part of this whole digital banking initiative is to open up financial access to second and third tier cities, right? So I think in the top tier cities like KL, Penang, Johor, there's enough access to financial services already. But I think in terms of the smaller markets, if you see the likes of Touch and Go, like Maybank, the MAE e-wallet, I think they're quite enabled there already. And again, we can work off the existing QR ecosystem to track their payments. what that means is that I think for a lot of these merchants in smaller cities, in rural areas, I mean, they are already, in a way, tech-enabled because they do, in most cases, based on my experiences, use e-wallets and the likes of digital payments. But at the same time, how do you open up financial access to these guys? So I think that's why the digital banks come in pretty well. They are able to take risk in areas where most banks usually shy away from, because I think the existing credit models do not give way to you giving loans of 10,000, 20,000, 50,000 ringgit. So smaller loans, they don't underwrite these type of credit opportunities. But I think for some of the digital banks, they are willing to underwrite. And if I see some of the comms in China, in the US, I think you do see this type of digital banks who will underwrite these type of smaller loans. In the end, it is up to the merchants to enable themselves to take up these loans. But I think the scenario that a digital bank is willing to undertake in terms of, I think, the loss levels, in terms of the interest rates, and so in terms of the target, the sizing is actually very different from what the general market is willing to take. And I think if you see into other emerging markets and other markets, it's something that's not new, and it's something that we can open up access to the broader ecosystem.
And opening access to a broader ecosystem, definitely there will be more competition. And how does increased competition in the financial sector influence the traditional technology, digital institution, and other services? What can we learn some of the best practices on the regional level, or best practices that can Malaysia adapt?
So if you think of it, I think the large, bulge bracket banks will still grow nonetheless. If you look at the past 1 year, obviously in the rate environment we're in, I mean, all the stock prices of all the large banks have done really, really well. So again, even though the digital banks have been concurrently launched, it doesn't seem to affect the traditional bank at all. But what that means is that I think slowly, for the average consumer, we'll just have more options. I just look at Aon Bank, for example. Now they're offering 3.88%. It's something that is higher rates than your traditional banks are willing to offer. So as an end consumer, number one, you just open up optionality. But I think number two, the digital banks will push some of these larger banks to digitize their offerings. I still find, like, when I deal with Maybank, a lot of the forms I still have to fill offline. There's still a lot of that. Whereas, like, I'm opening an account with GXBank or Aon Bank, for example, which I've done, it's all digital, right? So again, I think slowly the innovation will impact other companies. And again, for these larger banks, again, they usually are not the first to market, but when they see their competitors doing so, they will usually follow suit. Again, I think back to your question earlier, like, how does this impact the rural guy on the street? I think in the past, like, when you want to open up a bank account, you always have to show your face, or you have to go to a branch. Right. I think now, with the digibanks, I think most of it you can do virtually, and that just opens up a different ball game altogether.
And Raja, we also want to touch on the regulatory and security concern, which have become one of the main concerns when we talk about technology and digital sectors or industry. But please stay with us. We'll be taking a short break and we'll be right back.
Sure.
And we're back at Pantau Belanjawan. We're going to continue discussing about tech-based economy. How can it become the hub for innovations and even talent? We're going to, still with our guest ready on the line is Raja Hamzah, founding partner, RHL Ventures. I want to say thank you very much, Raja, for joining us. And we want to shift to our topic of tech-based economy to regulatory and security concerns, which have become major concerns for most individuals, organizations, and even the nations. And looking at the issues related to data security and consumer protection being addressed by fintech companies and regulators, what steps can be taken to ensure balanced development in the tech industry while mitigating the potential risks?
Okay, if you look into, I think, let's say GXBank, because we started with that, right? So again, I would say, I think in terms of the digital bank ecosystem, I think BNM or Bank Negara is probably one of the more advanced regulatory bodies in terms of creating an infrastructure ecosystem that's suitable, but at the same time obviously it's not perfect in a way that there's been certain things that I heard from the markets, the likes of EKYC, that are still being enhanced, and there's still nuances that we have to sort out. But I think in general, if I look into the regulatory ecosystem for tech, what I can say is I think it's quite accommodative for tech companies to grow, because in essence, a lot of the clients or corporates are willing to invest in technology. But at the same time, I think one key part I feel is a bit lacking is in terms of, I think, government spending into the tech and startup ecosystem. What that means is that I think, startups provide solutions. And again, solutions need clients. And if we can, let's say a software business can work closely with government agencies, with governments, I think that will enable the ecosystem to grow even further. So I find that the private sector, as usual, are a bit more nimble in terms of adopting the latest technology. But in essence, I feel like within the government ecosystem, we need to do more. But I think that's why I think under this prime minister, they has created a digital ministry, right? So in essence, what I've heard is that all the digital procurement or related will center on the digital ministry, or needs to be signed off by them. What that means is that from a digital point of view, whether it's in terms of some of the local content requirements, some of the local regulatory requirements, I think we need to be it needs to be very seamless. So it cannot be just one ministry doing something, or one government agency doing something. It all has to link up within the ecosystem, because in the end, in technology, I mean, your battleground is the world. It's no longer even Southeast Asia, right? So in terms of, let's say, data security, that the question you're asking, I think the big reason why a lot of data centers are opening up in Malaysia is because I think the US have stopped allowing data centers for their data to be placed in China, right? So again, a lot of data centers to move outside China, and that's why we have this opportunity at the moment. So again, there's always ebbs and flows in all of this. And again, I think from the tech point of view, we are probably a net beneficiary of the China plus one issue that's going on. But again, it's a long way to go, and I think we'll see a lot more movement, especially with the what's happening in the political scene in those large markets.
Yes, correct. A long way to go to enhance consumer financial literacy and overall experience. Hence, we need the collaborations to work together from the government agency, the education institution, and even other industry player, including the private sector. And looking at a global or international scale, what are some of the major global trends, future global trends that will drive the fintech revolutions in Malaysia particularly, and how might this international trends impact local markets and even the financial systems?
Okay, I was just, I had dinner with the folks at NVIDIA yesterday, and I think what we see is, I think that the reason NVIDIA is worth, let's say, $2.5–3 trillion is that I think that the use of AI in terms of decision making, in terms of research, and in terms of work has increased, and it's expected to increase even more. So I think there's two ways of looking at it, right? One, from a fintech ecosystem point of view, in a lot of the labor-heavy environments that we operate in, I think a lot of those labor-heavy issues will slowly wear off, meaning that we will have to kind of depend more on AI and automation in the future. I think we in Malaysia have been blessed in a way where I think labor costs are cheap, but again, us as people as a rakyat, we don't want the labor cost to be cheap, right? We want to grow up and be a high-income ecosystem. So again, I think with the use of what we're seeing in the latest global trends in AI, we will see that slowly being enabled and utilized more in Malaysia. But also what I mean is that I think in terms of our local talent to help the development of AI over here in Malaysia, I hope for that to improve as well. Given that we can't always depend on foreign companies to bring the latest technologies in, we still have to develop the ecosystem itself locally. So what that means in terms of, let's say, I'm looking from a, in terms of a government hat, and also in terms of, let's say, the financial ecosystem hat, I think we also have to be aware that, yes, sometimes it's easier to just license and overseas technology, but I think if we don't develop the skill set back home, in the margin will always be paid off to someone, right? So why not pay the margin to someone back locally? Let's say, and again, we see that in other countries where we prioritize our local companies in terms of procurement. I think in terms of certain key parts of the ecosystem, we need to slowly enable that and implement that so that we can, grow the local ecosystem, but at the same time, grow the wages. So what that means, I think we see a kind of like a super trend of AI, but again, as Malaysia, easier way is always to, hey, let's, bring all the foreign companies in. But again, I think there needs to be a right mix of bringing those foreign companies in and also working on our local talent and companies to grow the ecosystem. Because in the end, countries are always self-interested, and we will have to kind of work on ourselves as well.
And what strategies can the local stakeholders employ to adapt and benefit from the global fintech developments? As you mentioned, that it's no use if taking a license is easy, but developing the skill set, it's not, we can say, on a balanced state. So what's your opinion on this?
Okay, in terms of what the stakeholders can do, I think just jumping a bit. I mean, I was with some of the semiconductor guys, and we were talking to Phison, which is a Taiwanese company, but one of the founders is Malaysian. And I think he's met the Prime Minister in terms of expressing his views on creating a local content policy in Malaysia. Right? So in essence, I think what we need to do as a government is say that, hey, for certain strategic sectors, whether it's cybersecurity, maybe it's procurement in terms of, let's say, HR software, or isn't maybe in terms of even in the government laptops, right? There needs to be a certain level of local content to that. And again, it has to be genuine, right? Not just, the foreigners are doing, the higher value add stuff and the locals just do, the low value add stuff. I think we can push a strong local content policy to target strategic sectors, whether it's clean energy, whether it's semicon. I think those are the sectors that are very thematic right now. We need to have a strong, clear identity of where the nation wants to go in terms of these sectors, but also a strong content policy for these sectors. I believe the folks at MOF, MITI are discussing it already, but I would love to see something being implemented here locally too.
And talking about the outlook of the digital economy, is projected to contribute 25.5% to Malaysia's GDP by the end of next year, up from the current 23%. Your POV, Raja, can Malaysia achieve this? And what are some other strategies in place to ensure the long-term sustainability and resilience of the digital economy?
Okay, I know the figure is usually quoted as 25.5%, but again, I think in reality, that figure is way more, right? Because if you think of it, I mean, even in your video, the guy selling kueh on the roadside is enabled digitally these days through whether it's food delivery, whether it's payments, and even whether it's just, maybe rent the software POS system. So again, there's a digital ecosystem around it already. I think in terms of how we're going to help grow the ecosystem more, I think there's a few things. I think from putting on my VC hat, I think in terms of funding, I think there still needs to be a strong focus on funding our ecosystem. I think that's still lacking vis-a-vis some of our neighbors. Number two, I think in terms of government policy, I believe that it's a bit too fragmented at the moment. Digital is something that spawns all ministries. So again, I think if we look into it, someone needs to centralize all the kind of digital decision-making of the government, because it is such a thematic and it's such an important point for all ministries. I think number three is in terms of talent. I think we still need to have forward-looking training and talent to upskill our workforce and to increase the pay. If we don't increase the pay of our guys, in the end, to be realistic, a lot of the good folks will run away overseas, because that's where economic opportunities are strong. So we need to just, instead of thinking of it as brain drain, I think there's a pay gap that we need just to bridge, and we can bridge that pay gap to a reasonable manner. I think there'll always be a gap. I think if the gap is reasonable, we can actually help the tech ecosystem grow.
Raja, maybe my last question is talking about the upcoming budget or Belanjawan by Government Madani. You want to see what are some of the initiatives, efforts that we have now should be pushed forward, and what some of the initiatives that we could upgrade, on your opinion?
I believe number one is there's been talks on restructuring the fund of funds and ecosystem. I think that's ongoing, and I hope that carries through, and even more funding is given to that initiative. I think number two, in terms of internship and talent subsidies, I feel like we need to spend more on that. I think there was a lot of back and forth from HRD Corp recently. I believe there's a pool of capital that can be used to focus on helping companies upskill their talent and give people more skills in the workforce. Number three, I think in terms of, lastly, I always mention this, I think the local content policy, we can do that well. I think something that, companies will be able to benefit, and our local players, local companies, startups, corporates will be able to benefit as well.
All right, I want to say thank you very much for helping us understand of all of this initiative efforts. We know that are poised to play a pivotal role in advancing Malaysia's goal of establishing itself as a global tech leader and a central technology hub in the region. And again, I want to say thank you very much to Raja Hamzah, the founding partner, RHL Ventures, and definitely all of our discussion here will be featured in AstroAwani.com and across all social media platforms. And that's it for Pantau Belanjawan. I'm Nina Rosman. See you next round.